Hi, I'm Josephine Hughes. I'm the mother of two transgender daughters who came out in their teens and early 20s. I told my own stories in Series 1 of Gloriously Unready, and in Season 2 I'm finding out more about transgender people's experiences. Because as I adapted to having transgender daughters, it helped me a lot to get to know transgender people. In this series, I ask, what's it like to come out as transgender to a world that is not always ready for you? And how can you ever be ready to tell the people that you love that you're not the person they think you are? Today's guest is Tommy Powell. Tommy Powell is a young transgender man in his 20s. He began taking testosterone in June 2020 and has documented his transition on his Instagram, including his top surgery in Turkey in August 2020. Tommy, I'm really excited about speaking with you, and I'm sure that what you're going to tell us will help loads of us parents out there who really need to know more about what it's like to be transgender, and in particularly sort of what it's like to be a transgender man, because often, it seems that transgender men get forgotten about in all the sort of stuff that's talked about with regard to transgender issues. So do you feel like that? Do you feel that sort of transgender men aren't really acknowledged or talked about at all?
Yes, I do, because I think society appear to accept trans guys more than trans women, and they don't seem to think of us as a threat, whereas with trans women, they generally do. So we're kind of then forgotten about, even when going to the GPs. If you're down as a male, you don't get told that you need to have a smear test done or anything related with that, because on their record you're male, which I totally accept.
Yeah.
But it does leave it a little bit awkward when you phone up and say, "Can I have a smear test, please?"
Yeah. That is just such a really interesting perspective, I think, because we get a lot of people getting very cross about things like, you can't use the expression breastfeeding, or, there's a big hoo-ha about asking males whether they might be pregnant.
Mm.
But that's part of what you're talking about, isn't it? It's to be more inclusive towards trans
Yeah.
men.
If you're a biological woman and you've had a child and you want to call it breastfeeding, absolutely call it, whatever you want. If someone who isn't biologically male doesn't want to call it breastfeeding, that's also okay. It's up to the person. I'm sure lots of people have lots of different views on it.
There's almost like a lot of hot air, in a sense, a lot of heat, and actually perhaps it could just be resolved by say what's comfortable for you. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think this might sound really awful, but a lot of people feel that they maybe need to go a little bit too far and every single thing needs to change, but it doesn't. We, as trans people, kind of just need to relax a little bit with it. I understand when people get quite upset and annoyed and angry with things, but I know that we're in 2023 now, but it's not as if we can change everything overnight, because life doesn't work like that.
What I'm sort of curious about is, do you think that sense of take it slowly, almost in a sense, don't confront everybody with this needs to change now. Do you think that sort of viewpoint has been born from your own experience of coming out?
Yeah, because I didn't go 100 miles an hour. I took a long time to tell anybody. I think because I didn't really know how to. I do everything quite slowly, really. Again, it could just be myself. I didn't want people to be like, "Oh my gosh, we need to do this, we need to do that. We can't get it wrong. We need to get it right all the time." I knew deep down that people wouldn't get it right all the time.
Yeah.
Even more so if I pushed it. It's a bit like children. You tell a child not to do something, and they're gonna do it. You tell people that you really must do this and you cannot do this, and they're going to do what you don't want them to do.
Yeah.
Um, it's just because we're taller children, we're still we're still a little bit like children.
So tell me a bit more, because I'm sort of curious when you said it took you a long time to tell anybody. So did you sort of like, did you know for a long time? Was it something that you knew from a very young age, or was it more something that you knew as a teenager?
So growing up, I was a happy little girl, and I'll never ever deny that because I was. I was a bit of a tomboy. I liked to do everything with my dad, and my sister generally did most things with my mum, but I still didn't see myself as a little boy. I knew I was a little girl. It was as I got older, I thought something wasn't quite right within myself, and I thought that maybe I liked girls. So when I was 17 or 18, I had my first girlfriend.
Hmm.
And that was great. And I still didn't feel quite right. It wasn't that I was with a girl that was wrong because that then felt right.
Hmm.
But I felt like something wasn't right within me. Anyway, I just kind of ignored the feeling because I didn't know what the feeling was. I just knew
Yeah.
it wasn't right.
Hmm.
Um, and I didn't want to try and research it because Google will tell you anything. Um, and
So
then
it
the
didn't go
one,
down that rabbit hole.
yeah, yeah. I'd have been growing 10 arms
Yeah.
and everything if I'd have
Yeah.
asked. So I left it, and then I was watching a YouTube video. It was FTM, transgender man or boy or guy, male. And I realised actually I wasn't a girl,
Hmm.
I was a guy.
That's a fairly big thing to acknowledge
Yeah,
to yourself, isn't it? Really, really big thing to acknowledge to yourself.
yeah. It was probably about a year after I told my parents that I was then a lesbian, and they were absolutely fine with that.
Yeah.
But I couldn't then go and tell them this other, what I thought was big news.
Yeah.
So didn't say anything until about 3 or 4 years later.
Right. It was quite a long time then, wasn't it?
Even when I think back now, I wasn't ready to be Tommy then.
Hmm. What was the tipping point for you? What actually enabled you ultimately to say, yeah, I am a man, and this is, I'm going to tell everybody.
Um, I don't really know. I
Mm,
think it was that I told a few of my friends, and then that same day I knew that I needed to tell my parents because I didn't want them to hear it from someone else.
yeah.
Um, I mean, it was very scary. I was absolutely petrified because I'd seen all these videos about parents who would disown their children or,
Hmm.
trans people whose families don't want anything to do with them.
Hmm.
And I just thought, oh my gosh, that might be me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, it was the complete opposite, but it was still a massive, massive fear that I had. So I I went home because I was living there at that point, and I went and lay on the sofa, and my mum said, "Oh, what's wrong, darling?" I
She
said,
picked up on it straight away.
"Yeah, true mum style." I said, "Oh,
Yeah.
nothing, nothing." She said, "Oh, are you sure?" And I was waiting for my dad to go to bed at 10 o'clock, which he
Right.
does religiously, even to this day, every
Yeah.
night. And I still just lay on the sofa watching the telly. And mum said, "Are you sure you're all right?" I said, "Yeah, I'm fine." She said, "Come over here and tell me what's wrong." I know, I think I started to cry, and I told her that I wanted her to still love me,
Yeah.
to which then
Poor
she's
woman
probably
must have been
thinking, what the hell is this child going to tell me? And then I just said, "Mum, I'm something along the lines of, I'm not a girl, I'm a boy." And she went, "Oh, all right. Have you told your dad?" No. So then she went and got my dad, and he came down with his hands on his hips and went, "Yeah, what's wrong?" So I said it again.
Yeah.
He went, "All right, okay, good night." And that was it. Yeah, I've never known him to come downstairs after being woken up. I can't really remember what conversations we'd had, but I'd already done my research with how I wanted to access hormones. I'd already booked an appointment with my GP.
Mm-hmm.
So just explained it to Mum. And, she wanted to come with me to my first appointment. And
How long did you have to wait to get an appointment?
I was referred... Oh, wait, it's somewhere between 2018 and...
So long that you can't exactly remember when it was.
Yeah. And yeah, so I haven't been seen with them. I chose to go privately for both hormones and surgery. With hormones, I emailed in the October, and I had an appointment for the August, and then in the January there was a cancellation for the next day.
Yeah.
And you still have to be seen by a psychiatrist, and they have to check that everything's okay. In the appointment they ask quite a lot of questions, and it's more based around everything but being trans.
I was going to say, I saw my daughter's assessment for at the gender identity clinic, and it was asking her so many really intrusive questions about sexuality and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how my upbringing was. Have my parents ever suffered any mental health problems? It was a lot, and if I'm honest, I don't really have anything to tell them. I was very honest and said, I haven't been living as Tommy for overly long. I know that this is right. That was the January, and then my prescription came in the June.
So were you nervous before taking it, or?
I was excited.
Yeah.
I didn't want to go bald, which is now happening. There's lots of different changes that happen. And the main problem I didn't want was to go bald. I didn't care about anything else. I just didn't want to lose my hair, even though my dad was bald at like 23. I've got 4 years on him now, and I've got more hair.
Because that must be sort of like, that must be quite a change.
My mum's dad, till the day he died, he had a brilliant head of hair. He had some grey around the ears, and it was all brown.
So you're trying to go after the maternal line.
Yeah.
But you began to take after your dad's line.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, go on. How has that felt to start going bald?
Awful.
Really?
I must have looked at 20 million different places to have a hair transplant or a hair system. I've tried taking different medications to try and keep it, but it just isn't doing it.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll be long until I just get rid of it myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really interesting, isn't it? This whole stuff about gender, when you're transgender, you come across a whole lot of other things, don't you?
And with the experiencing what men experience is that you're expected to act a certain way. And you're expected to be really masculine. I'm the complete opposite. I am not masculine at all. I am the gayest straight guy I know. I'm not really masculine at all. I still, even now, get all of my trousers from the girls section. I'll wear something that I'm comfortable in. If other people don't like it, I don't really care. Yeah.
And I think this is, again, something that bridging this gender divide, this gender binary actually gives us, isn't it? Is, well, actually, why are we following these particular rules as to what you wear if you're a man and what you wear if you're a woman? Except I think there's a lot of pressure on transgender people to dress sort of traditionally as a masculine person or traditionally as a feminine person.
Yeah. My mum and dad had 2 girls, and we still had boy toys and girl toys because to us they were just toys.
Yeah. I was going to say, we haven't talked about this, but when you came out, you were living in quite a small area where everybody knows each other, weren't you? So tell me a bit about that. What was it like coming out in an area where sort of everybody knew you in your previous name?
It was nice in the sense that you could probably only tell a handful of people and then everybody would know.
Which is why you're so keen to tell your parents so quickly.
So I didn't really have to tell many people because I knew it would just spread quicker than you could pick your fingers. But a lot of people continued to get it wrong. but deliberately got it wrong.
Right.
You know, I don't mind people that have known me forever accidentally getting it wrong. That doesn't bother me one bit. But when somebody who didn't know me now apparently knows me and doesn't call me Tommy, even
Really?
now, it just doesn't really make sense, because if you're consciously trying to call me something or someone that I'm not, you might as well just call me my name. So I've not really had much hate or negativity around being trans, except from a group of people from where I'm from, and there were 5 or 6 of them, and it was message after message after message after message,
Really?
saying that they were going to come and assault me, sexually assault me, find out where I live,
Oh, goodness.
come into my house in the middle of the night, and it's not hard to find out where people are from. And there was this one guy, yeah, he's just, without this sounding awful, they weren't even the type of people that looked like they would be bullies. And he just messaged me and said, "Oh, you're not going to ring the police on me now, are you, darling?" And I thought, oh my gosh, why haven't I already done it?
Yeah.
Like, thank you so much for bringing that idea to me. So that's what I did. I don't know if it was coincidence or what, but I've not heard
Anything since.
anything since.
Yeah. Yeah. So how was it, you know, when you did report it to the police, were you given like a fair hearing, do you think?
I did it online, and then I was at my friend's house, and my mum and dad rang me, and they said, "I think you need to come home. The police are here and they want to talk to you."
Wow.
And they won't tell me what it's about. But they were really nice. They just said, you know, if anything like this does happen again, just let us know. Only one of the 5 or 6 people were known to them.
But it stopped after that.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. How did it sort of affect you at the time, do you think, having to be exposed to those sorts of hate messages?
It was more when people, like when that group of people said things about my family.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't really care too much about me, because I thought it's just a message online. If they want to say something, they'll say it to me. And you know, whenever I walked past them in the street afterwards, they never said anything. And I was on my own. But I knew that I would get some people that disagree with it and don't like it and have views and opinions that to me are irrelevant. But I don't like to let them get to me. I kind of just put a wall up and just, you can say whatever, but you're talking to the wall at the moment. You're not talking to me.
Yeah.
When you finish, the wall goes away, and
Yeah.
for a minute or two I might be sad, and then afterwards I'm like, oh yeah, they said X, Y, Z.
Yeah. Do you get much attention sort of, yeah, I know you've moved cities now, but, you know, do you find you still get attention, or was it just sort of living it at home that it happened?
It was just living at home. I mean, here, nobody knows me. Again, is a really nice, refreshing feeling, but I feel like I'm lying to everyone. Not that I need to walk around with a banner,
Yeah.
but it's a feeling that is strange to describe.
Because you're sort of being honest in that you are being you.
Yeah.
You're being Tommy, and this is who you are. But the fact is people don't know that at another point in your life, you weren't Tommy.
Yeah. Even with my DBS that came back the other day, it's my first one that only has the name Tommy on it. It's a lovely feeling, but strange. And that's the only word I can use to describe it, I think.
Yeah. Does it feel a bit sort of like almost like an imposter syndrome, do you think? Is it that sort of feeling?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost sort of like being able to pass is held up as, you know, like a really good thing. And yet also, by the sounds of it also leaves you with some sort of complicated feelings as well.
Yeah. You don't really hear about people, or people don't really share their stories when they move away from home.
This is one of the things about being almost like on the cutting edge of the change that we're seeing, I think, isn't it? It's that we haven't got that body of literature to support you in your experience of life. So that's why it feels quite lonely in a sense.
I would say more isolated,
Yeah.
because I don't know that many trans people anyway. At least back home, my friends knew, and they knew that if I didn't want to go swimming or I didn't want to do something like that, it was
Yeah.
because of everything underneath.
Yeah. Because I think with the benefit of people who are listening, it might be worth saying why swimming might be a bit problematic for you.
Pre-surgery, I would have just wore a binder and then a t-shirt, and
Yeah.
because I am a bigger guy, people didn't really take much notice of it.
Yeah.
Because I am bigger, everything was kind of smoother. It all went into one, and it just
Yeah.
looked more like moobs, really.
Yeah.
And then now that I've had surgery, and I've got these two scars, it's very flat. I think it was 9 months post-op, so it's still quite fresh. And to me, everybody's looking at me, but in reality, they're probably not. A few people may look, but the majority probably wouldn't
Yeah.
notice because I am quite hairy.
Yeah. It's not really a sort of poolside conversation that you want to have,
No,
is it?
not at
Yeah.
all.
It's sort of like an aspect of life that perhaps those of us who are cisgendered, we don't think about, do people need to know our backgrounds? Do I need to
Yeah.
explain myself? Can I say yes to social events? It's not something that we would ever
No.
be concerned about, would it? And yet you're
And
sort of having to think about it and think, well, what would I do? And
yeah, and with you saying that, it's like if we go out somewhere, I need to know where the toilet is.
yeah,
I need to know if there's a disabled toilet, if you need a key for the disabled toilet. If there's only one cubicle in the men's toilets, chances are that is going to be an awful cubicle, and I
I
am
can
absolutely
imagine.
not going there. Do the other guys in the toilets know that I'm trans with how it sounds when I go to the toilet? With
Yeah,
how I wee?
yeah,
Because in my head, they would know. If I could go in a disabled toilet every time, I absolutely would. And I bought a disabled key from Amazon, which I will use generally if we're in a really busy place, or there's lots of kids around, like youth age kids.
yeah.
They definitely wouldn't look at me now and think, oh, I think he's trans. But
But it's sort
it's
of,
that internal fear.
and presumably the thought of using the ladies' loos is just anathema, I should think, because you probably don't feel safe there either.
If I had to choose, if I'm completely honest, if I had to choose, I would much rather go into the women's toilets.
Yeah, yeah,
However, if I was to, I think people would be very concerned, and though they wouldn't like it because they would see me as a guy using the
yeah,
women's toilets.
yeah,
I had somebody say to me not so long ago, but I wouldn't feel comfortable with a trans woman going into the toilets. And I said, well, would you be comfortable with me using the toilets? And this person didn't know anything about me. And she said, well, absolutely not. You're a guy. I said, but would you be happy with me coming into the toilets? I said, because if you don't want trans women to go into the toilets and you think it should all be down to biology, then I'm going to be going to the women's toilets.
yeah, yeah,
And she just couldn't understand that, oh, right, okay, well, I need to really think about this. Do I want men that look like men
yeah,
that are trans coming in? Do I want trans men who look
like men.
like men coming
Yeah,
into the toilets, or do I
yeah,
want trans women that look like women coming into the toilets?
yeah, yeah,
I'd feel safer in a room of trans women
yeah,
going, going to the toilet in the same space as them than
yeah,
I would a bunch of men. In reality, the trans women are probably a million times more scared than anybody else. It's a topic that lots of people like to talk about because apparently genitals are very, important, and they're not.
yeah. Which brings me on nicely to the next thing to talk about. Which is, are you okay to tell us about your top surgery? Because that's sort of like another aspect of the body that...
Yeah. In the UK, when I was looking, the prices privately, because again, I haven't been seen by the NHS, were ranging from to 11,000. I didn't have that sort of money. For me, it was either I get top surgery and we buy a house, or I get top surgery done in the UK and we don't buy a house. And obviously went for the option where we could have both.
Yeah.
And I went to Turkey. And as daunting as it sounds, it doesn't seem real until you get there. It was the best thing I have ever done.
Wow.
People before were saying, "Oh, you don't want to be going to Turkey. It's dangerous out there. What if it goes wrong?" Well, it can go wrong. It can go wrong in the UK. In Turkey, they're probably not going to want to get it wrong because they don't want to get a bad reputation. And obviously, I'd done my research and knew how I wanted my chest to look. But in terms of the care from the Turkish nurses, the surgeon, everybody, I genuinely would say it was better than I probably would have received in the UK. They looked after me, they looked after my partner,
It's a really positive experience by the sounds of things. Yeah.
It was a third of the price. It is strange because you don't feel like it's real. You go to Turkey with all this cash, because you've got to take cash. You can pay by card, but you have to pay X amount on top.
It's quite scary carrying that amount of money left around, isn't it? And you're thinking this is actually going to pay for something that's really important. It must be terrifying. Sort of like having to have it bolted onto your arm or something, like you see in the films, I should think.
And walking into the bank, before going and saying, "Oh, hiya, can I just withdraw £3,500, please?"
Yeah.
The lady did look at me weirdly, and I did say to her, "I'm going for surgery abroad." And she went, "Oh, fine."
Yeah.
But yeah, it was the best thing I have ever done, and I couldn't fault it. You turn up to the hospital, and then within about half an hour, 45 minutes, you're being called to lie on the bed for them to sedate you, and off you go. You go in, you sign your paperwork, you get taken to your room. Then the surgeon comes in and he says, "Take your top off." So I'm like, "Oh gosh, okay." So I take my top off and I'm stood, and the windows in the room were the biggest windows you've seen in your life. The blinds weren't shut.
Yeah.
They were all open. But I thought, well, they're going anyway, so whatever. And then he just says, "Do you want nipples or no nipples?" I said, "Well, are they going to take? Are they going to stay on? Because there is that risk that they don't." And he said, "They'll stay on." And then he said, "I'll see you in the theatre." I said, "Oh, okay." Didn't think much more of it. He left. About 10 minutes later, heard the loudest knock on the door. "Tommy, Tommy!" Thinking, "Oh my gosh, what's going on here?"
Yeah.
Come on, glasses off. Okay. Say goodbye.
Oh, goodness. Yeah.
And then they put whatever it was through the cannula. And I can't even remember coming out of the lift. And then coming back round, I was so cold. I literally thought I was freezing to death.
Yeah.
So they shoved this massive heater under you. And I just remember being so happy but so exhausted. Opening the bathroom door to go to the loo. And there they were. My boobs on the floor.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
Talk about an out-of-body experience.
There were two bags, and it labelled them left and right, how much they weighed. They weighed just over 3 kilograms. When the surgeon came in, it was I think it was the morning after. I said, "Oh, did everything go well?" He said, "Yes, Tommy." He said, "Usually we put what did he call it? Breast in a dog poo bag." I said, "Oh, right, okay." He said, "For you, we had to get bin liners." And me and Lindsay were absolutely peeing our pants. Oh my gosh, I could not stop laughing. And it really hurt when I laughed, but bin liners. I said, "Oh, right, okay. Sorry." They legally have to show you what they've taken from you, and you have to leave it there. So once it's been there, you can ask them to remove it, but nobody else can ask them to remove it. It's got to be the person it was removed from. They were interesting to look at.
Yeah. So did you have any sort of ceremony to say goodbye to them or anything like that? Or
No, we took lots of pictures.
yeah. Yeah.
um,
Yeah. I was going to, what I'm really interested in is, I think you said having top surgery was the best thing you've ever done. So do you think out of the two that sort of like in a sense top surgery was more affirming of your gender identity than having T?
No, I would definitely choose hormones over surgery for me, purely
Yeah.
because my voice as a girl was very, very high pitched, and it was like a really irritatingly annoying, typical girly voice. So if I had to have chosen, it would have been hormones. And when I even went for my first appointment with hormones, he said, "Oh, what are your views on top surgery?" And I said, "Oh, I would like it at some point, but I'm not ready quite yet." And he said, "Okay, so do you want a referral now?" He said, "Because I don't think you're quite ready." So then when I was ready, I had a consultation, which I didn't even need in the end.
Yeah.
But
did that help you to sort of like know even more that you were definitely okay to go for it and that you'd go for it privately?
because we knew we were going to be moving, I wanted to feel complete, or whatever you want to call it, before moving. I knew that I wasn't going to be able to pay NHS prices, not NHS,
So
sorry, private
UK.
prices. Yeah. So I thought, well, I'll have a look around. And this place in Turkey kept going up and kept coming up and kept coming up. And I just thought, is this a sign? Shall I just go there? And then I originally booked in for the June and then cancelled it because I got too scared.
Yeah.
And I just thought, I'm not ready yet. And then I rescheduled it for the end of August. And I'm glad I waited.
How did it help you to wait?
Financially, really. more than
Had time to
anything.
save more. Yeah.
And I needed to make sure I'd been working where I had been for X. I can't remember how long it was. I think it was 3 years, because I needed to make sure that I would get full pay, full sick pay, so that I could afford,
Yeah.
to live when I get home, because you still got rent to pay, bills to pay,
Yeah.
everything.
How long were you off work for?
2.5 months, I think. And then I had a phased return. I mean, I was still getting paid sick pay, because otherwise I wouldn't have been paid properly. But I started to go in for a couple of hours on like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
Yeah.
My job role had to change. Like, I had to do a lot of admin stuff, which I wasn't really keen on. But I still wasn't able to bend properly. And
Yeah. It's work understanding.
yeah, they were brilliant. My manager and deputy manager, they're not young. Well, they are young. And I told them everything that I was doing, and I was advised to wait a little bit longer so that I had more sick time, like sick pay, and I couldn't fault them. And even when I was over there, they messaged me just to make sure everything was okay.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah.
Yeah, so they were brilliant, and they understood that even though I was off sick, if they saw on social media I was doing something, it didn't mean that I could work, because they knew that I couldn't lift things and do things. And I popped in once I came home from Turkey, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, you're not coming back yet, are you?"
Stay away. We don't.
Yeah, but yeah, they were absolutely
So
fantastic.
good. Yeah. So we're just sort of reaching the end of our time together. What would you like people to know, do you think? In closing, what would be your sort of message you'd like to leave people with?
It would probably be that it's okay if you don't understand. It's okay if you don't get it right every time. It's okay if you make mistakes, but respect people and don't deliberately get things wrong.
Yeah. I mean, from just listening to your story, you did have people who deliberately tried to get it wrong.
Yeah.
But then you're also sort of quite forgiving towards people who have good intentions, but just sort of forget. Yeah.
My friends who are, either non-binary or trans themselves, I still get it wrong. I don't do it deliberately, but I would never say, I get it right every single time, because I don't. Even with other people, I often say, if I'm speaking about Lindsay, I say he, or, and she's just this woman.
Yeah.
Or even as a kid, instead of shouting mum, I'd shout dad, or
Yeah.
we all do these things, and that is
Yeah.
absolutely fine, but it's making sure that you go around it the right way, and that, if you do make a mistake, just say, oh, sorry, or oh, I mean he or
Yeah.
she or
Yeah.
them, or
Yeah.
whatever pronoun is
Yeah.
correct for
Yeah.
that person.
Yeah.
And if you don't know somebody's pronouns, just ask them. When I first asked somebody, what their pronouns were, I did feel very awkward, even as a trans person.
And do you introduce yourselves and say, I'm Tommy, I've got pronouns he, him, or?
On the bottom of emails, I generally do,
Yeah.
except for with my new work. I haven't with them yet. And I did that for my previous place that I worked in.
Yeah.
People say, why have you got those? People know you're a guy.
Yeah.
I said, well, people on the phone still think I'm a woman.
Yeah.
So, I
Yeah.
still get called a lady on the phone, or, are you ringing on behalf of Tommy? So that's why I do it on emails.
It just makes it clear and helps people to know where you're coming from. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I sort of find the thought of asking people their pronouns, will people be insulted or whatever? But it's just really helpful for transgender people that we do, isn't it? I mean, that's the point of doing it.
If you're unsure and you maybe don't feel confident enough to ask, use gender neutral pronouns or their name, because that way you can't get that wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it depends on your relationship with that person. If one of my groups of friends was to call us all girls, I couldn't care less. At the end of the phone, they'll all say, "Oh, bye, girls," and that doesn't bother me. I mean, the one of them is trans himself. It's not done maliciously or nastily. That's just the relationship that we all have with each other.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll have to draw the interview to a close, but just before we do, would you like to tell people where we can find you on your sort of social media? And
yes, so my Instagram is tomroo13, so TOMROO13, and that's where you'll find me. Everything I post is quite real. It's not necessarily trans related, but it's kind of an insight into my life, my chaotic life.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for coming and sharing something of what's been going on for you and your journey. It's been really
And thank you for having me.
The impression I gained of Tommy is this is someone who's self-assured, who doesn't have a point to prove, and who is happily themselves. He's understanding of people who may find it difficult to accept change, while also protecting himself against those who act maliciously. I suspect his laid-back attitude has a lot to do with knowing how lovable he is, something that parents, family and friends can do a lot to reinforce. Although Tommy is careful, like many trans men and non-binary people, to acknowledge the flack that many of their transgender sisters receive, I think it's important to state that those assigned female at birth also receive their fair share of prejudice. It's usually couched in terms such as they're unable to accept their bodies or they're victims of social contagion. The implication that those assigned female at birth are too weak, too readily influenced by others, to know their own minds. I think in Tommy we hear someone who is grounded and honest in their assessment of themselves. And next time we'll hear from Marley, a non-binary person. They found that acknowledging they were transgender resolved the issue of being labelled and socialised as a girl.